So, first, we are going to start now with handling objects in museums. Okay, in handling objects in museums, we decided to choose some different typologies. So we are going to talk about glass and ceramics, stone, metals, textiles or costumes, photographic materials, furniture, paintings, and also works on paper. So we are going to start by general guidelines that are used to every of these or even a different type of objects. The first rule is never handle an object unless it's really need to handle. Before handling, you should check the object to see if the object can safely be moved. What are the risks? Have a space already clean and clear to receive the object, and where are you moving? And all about the route. Are the doors, elevators, everything clear? More important sometimes, will it fit the place that you think you are planning to move it? Do you need a card or do you need someone else help? And you also have to decide if you need gloves. So, for instance, this nice lady had this simple problem because she didn't realize that she should observe the object before trying to move it. This is a fingerprint on the left side, a fingerprint on brass due to someone moving it with its bare hands. Why wearing gloves? Your skin has oils, salt, dirt, and moisture. So objects particularly sensitive to damage from this type of contamination, when handled with bare hands, this kind of objects like metals surface or polished silver, copper, and brass gilded surface and photographs can be easily damaged due to this handling. Another reason is that sometimes objects have been treated with toxic contaminants in the past, and now they can be toxic for human health. So you should not touch that kind of objects without using gloves. You have to make sure that your gloves are clean, and usually nowadays people choose between cotton or nitrile gloves, but you have a whole range, and as you can see in the figure, all range different gloves. So before handling, although this the silver-plated goblet was already tarnished, it can be marked with your hands. Why do not wear gloves? There are circumstances where gloves can reduce the sensitivity of touch and therefore not be recommended. Most of the glass and ceramics are safer when handled with well-washed hands. I will try to do something really, really difficult, that is to put here a video, to show you a video. I would like to
You will manage.
A question we often get.
Filomena, we are not seeing the video.
No, you have to share.
Yes, wait a moment, because it's...
It is not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now we can
okay.
see it. Okay.
That is perfect.
Thanks, guys. This for your patience. Thank you for your patience. Okay, let's go to see the video from the beginning.
A question we often get asked is why conservators sometimes wear gloves and sometimes not when handling museum objects. Although we emphasize wearing gloves when handling objects, there are actually no set rules. The conservator makes a decision on whether or not to wear gloves, depending on the material, the task, and the nature and fragility of the object. The diversity of objects requires that we assess each object individually and make the right decision.
One of the few object types that we work with that you don't need to use gloves with is what we call brown furniture. Brown furniture objects are often jointed, they're wooden, and they have a veneer on them. And what you tend to find is that, with the exception of highly decorative French polished surfaces, these objects are robust enough and their surface coatings are robust enough for us to be able to handle them without gloves.
When handling metal objects, gloves are normally worn in order to avoid damaging the object. Acids and oils from fingers can have a corrosive effect on metals. In particular, this is a problem with historical metals. These can etch into the surface, can be very difficult to remove, and can ultimately affect the integrity of the object.
An important aspect of wearing nitrile gloves is not just to protect the objects, but also to protect the people handling the objects. Many objects in our collection have components that are inherently toxic or hazardous. There are many other objects that have been purposely contaminated, such as, for example, poison weapons, as organic materials are particularly vulnerable to being attacked by pests, and they were treated with a vast array of pesticides from the 18th century up until the 1990s. That's why it's crucial to wear gloves when handling objects with suspected or confirmed contamination.
Wearing gloves also protect us from hazardous substances. For example, mold can sometimes be found on ceramic objects, as in the case of these terracotta figurines. When handling hazardous objects, conservators always make sure to dispose of gloves after use. In the past, conservators at the British Museum wore white cotton gloves, and apparently each conservator had only one pair. But nowadays, conservators prefer to wear disposable nitrile gloves, which would protect them from objects and vice versa. There are a few main points when choosing the right glove. Firstly, the size. It is very important to wear the right size of glove in order to prevent any handling damage to the objects. Secondly, the thickness of the glove. Obviously, the thicker gloves are more protective for us, but they would also create problems for our manual dexterity. Thirdly, not to wear dirty and torn gloves when working on objects, as this defeats the main purpose of wearing gloves in the first place.
When we conserve documents, prints, and drawings, we don't usually use gloves. We handle them with dry, clean hands. Hand washing will remove the dirt and the natural oils from hands, and is an effective alternative to use of gloves.
When working with wall paintings, we generally wear gloves to protect the objects. There's fragile pigments on the surface, and the oils in our hands will affect the pigment and the color. They also might wear away the surface. The gloves just prevent damage. And in this case, we created an edge to handle the objects so we avoid touching the object itself.
When treating archaeological objects, such as painted polychrome Egyptian coffins, we tend to wear gloves. We want to make sure that we're not transferring any dirt or dust that's on the surface to other areas on the object, as well as onto ourselves. From a health and safety perspective, Egyptian pigments were actually made from ground minerals, and this is why the colors remain so vibrant today. However, some of the pigments are actually made from toxic minerals, such as orpiment and realgar, which is used to make some yellows as well as some reds. And these can be hazardous to your health if ingested. When we deal with smaller and more delicate tasks, we use tweezers, and this actually means that you don't have to touch the surface of the object. So sometimes you'll see conservators not wearing gloves because you're not handling the object.
Often as textile conservators, we choose not to wear gloves and work with our bare hands. That is because sometimes we really need that extra sensitivity through our fingertips to be able to carry out our work and also to really understand the inherent fragility and strengths of the materials that we're working with.
As you can see, conservators wear gloves depending on the type of objects and the work they carry out on them. And when there's any doubt on how to handle objects, they are the best people to get advice from.
Yeah, did you like it? I like it.
Yes, very clear.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. Are you seeing the
PowerPoint,
Yes, the PowerPoint.
yeah, PowerPoint. Yeah, that's it. So let's continue. All about gloves. We have already seen all about gloves. That's very important. Now, handling is not just about gloves, it's about that the staff has to know what is doing. So handling should be done only by properly trained staff. You cannot imagine how many, the risk that an object has when he's handling by anyone, because if he's inside a drawer that no one goes in, and it's okay. But the point that when you start handling the object, he is in danger, believe me. So do not smoke, drink, or eat around objects. Do not use pens or sharp objects around the collections. Do not hurry, so be calm. Handle every object as if it was the most precious in your collection. Only handle and move one object at a time. Use two hands, doesn't matter how tiny the object is. Support the object by the body. Never lift the body by handles or straps. Pick it up by its most solid component. Avoid transferring an object from a person to another. This is very easy. If you are trying to pass an object to another person, she can be not look exactly at the same that you are seeing, and you lift the object and it goes down in the floor. So usually what you should do is to put the object in a table, or in the worst case scenario in the floor, and then someone will pick it up. If the object is heavy, large, or awkward, please find help. Never touch friable surface like pastels, flunky paint, or grizzled glass. When moving an object more than a few steps, always use a support board, a container, or a card, as you can see here. If necessary to use, you can padding to support. And if an accident occurs, you should record the damage in a condition report, keep a label detached of the detached parts, and consult a conservator in the area. This means don't do anything, just take a picture of what is going on and call for a conservator. Now we are going to talk about how to handle paintings. So first things first, what you see on the left is the right way of two persons handling a painting. But before handling the painter, you need to check the strength of the frame, obviously. Never lift paintings by frames or hanging hardware. Always carry upright, unless the paint surface is fragile, in which case keep the picture plane horizontal all times. So if you have a painting that is flunking, the picture layer is flunky, you have to put it in the horizontal, otherwise always in the vertical. Take care if there are decorative elements in the frame. If the painting has a glass carry with the glass side towards you, with one hand at the bottom and another on one side. Never touch or lean anything directly on the front or on the back of the painting. This is the correct way in the first, from the left is the correct way to handling a small painting. And these two are the wrong ways to incorrect to handling a small size painting. Framed paintings, if they are heavy and oversized, it's always better to use A-frame trolley. The A-frame trolley is this that you can see on the left side in this photo. The A-frame trolley can also be used one frame times, but these paintings should have a rigid backing applied before they being moved. Okay, let's talk about backing boards. Backing boards, you can install a backing board like an auxiliary support, but it has several advantages. It will protect the painting from mechanical damage from behind. It will prevent dirt and debris from falling between the lower bar of the auxiliary support and the canvas. It will buffer the fluctuations in relative humidity. It will decrease the painting's response to shock and will reduce the vibration of the canvas in case of transit. And this, what you see in the left is a photo of a backing board. Unframed samples, paintings. We have to be very careful not to place fingers between the canvas and the stretcher or the strainer members, as this may cause damage to the item. I would like again to try to show you. It's okay? Are you seeing?
No.
No.
No?
Just click
No?
on share screen again, please.
Yes, I will. It's okay now?
No.
No.
Oh, this isn't working. Oh, bear with me just a minute, just a minute. So I'm going trying to.
Yeah, starting. All right.
Now.
Have
Okay.
it.
It's okay?
Yes.
Now.
Thank you. Thank you.
To you. Okay, perfect.
Our final category is furniture and wooden objects. As with all objects, look at the piece carefully. Take into account areas that could be weak or loose or could split. Be cautious of what you wear. Items of clothing or jewelry such as belt buckles, watches, or rings can scratch furniture. And, as with all artifacts, wash hands before touching furniture. Lift a chair by supporting its weight at the underside of the seat rails. Never lift or move a chair by its uppermost member, the crest rail. To move an easy chair, lift by grasping each side and avoid touching the upholstery. Check for loose accessory parts and ornaments that need to be removed and proceed with care.
So, for instance, a cartouche windows, usually they are secured with a screw. We're not going to remove it just in-house, but if we have to put it in a crate, we would want to remove it to prevent any damage. The finials are very often loose. This one is actually pretty stable, but if they were loose, you would want to remove them. In order to move this high chest, we're going to need to remove all the drawers first. So we're going to use the handles to pull the drawer out, at least at the beginning. So first we need to check that they are secure. Okay. So check here, I use the gloves, since it's metal.
Okay. Stephanie, why don't we grab it from the edge?
And we want to avoid that because it's fragile, and by putting it, usually you have to put your fingernails underneath, and you run into the risk of damaging the edge. The wood could fail. So when you put it out, you want to put your hand underneath, one of your hand, to relieve the weight. And be careful when it comes out that it doesn't pop up. Here I would like to point out this worn area inside, and you would usually see that on both sides. Here it's more pronounced on this side, and that's a result of the drawer going back and forth and damaging the bottom. So to put it back, we want to make sure that our hand is underneath, and that obviously we check everywhere it's not gonna damage.
When replacing a drawer, place its bottom corners first and follow through by tilting its main body up and into the opening.
So we're going to open and close the doors of this desk and bookcase. So the first thing is to check that the object here is not. So I'm going to grab just the edge here with the belt of my finger, not my nails, and I'm just pressing it against. So I keep one hand here to prevent this movement, and I keep one hand underneath. We're going to close the door, so you're going to start. Close the locks. Supporting the weight as you just did was perfect to prevent too much rubbing against the surface. I'm helping here to read the weight so that it doesn't rub.
Although a piece of furniture may appear stable, often there are risks not immediately apparent, such as swing legs, loose hinges, and movable tabletops.
This card table, it's another example of a piece of furniture with a moving part, which in this case is a back swinging leg. That's going to open to allow the opening of the tabletop. We're going to grab right underneath the rails, make sure everything under our hands is secure. I'm going to lift very slightly this side so that it doesn't rub and ease the movement of the leg. The first thing here you have to be careful of is the hinge that can not be secure and it can just drop when you open it. So you put your hand underneath. And I squeeze the two rails together to hold the sole. I have to tilt down first. Slap underneath, my hand underneath the rails, and my other hand here. Here, the tongue is well attached. We're going to grab it by the base, so you can grab it here or wherever, and I can grab it here. And we are holding the tabletop. And I need to put the latch back, just lifting a little bit with my arm. Down, the latch back in, check it secure.
Do not handle furniture by thin, fragile legs. If legs must be grasped to avoid decorative elements, hold them as close to the main body as possible.
Usually we would just grab underneath the rails on each corner, but here we have decorative elements that are very delicate. In this case, we can check they're secure. Sometimes they're not. The legs are also very thin and delicate. So in this case, we're going to want to put our hands here. So even though it's very light and small, it's an object to carry, to handle with a lot of care.
Okay. Okay, we are back to the presentation.
So, everybody is listen to me? Is okay?
Yes.
So, as you saw in that movie, were a small movie. We were talking about moving and handling furniture. Which can be, as you see, very tricky depending on the furniture that you are dealing with. So, just to give you some special notes, you should establish whether there are any removable parts, like drawers, for instance, and if so, you should remove these and handle them separately. You should also establish whether are any movable parts, so you secure some of them with padding and ties. Never slide or drag furniture. This is major mistake. And usually keep the furniture upright. What I mean is that the position that the furniture is when it's on a hard place, this position should be the position that you use to transport the furniture. Of course, you have to use trolleys or specialized lifting equipment where possible, especially with heavier objects. So do not lifting chairs from the top of the back, always by hold each side of the seat and lift. We also saw that in the the movie, lift the object from the most convenient part, check if the legs should be padded when moving a great distance, as this will protect them from chipping and scratching when you have the very decorated legs. Tables should be lifted from their aprons. Do not lift a table from its top or legs. So we also saw that. Now, let's go to textiles or costumes. Handling with textiles. Textiles should not be folded. If you have a large textile, we have to roll it. Rolled textile should be carried horizontally with each end supported, as you can see in this picture. If you have small textiles or costumes, you can find a board or a trail to transport it instead of touching the tassel itself. In case the textile needs to be turned over, then we should consider to do a sandwich between the couple of pieces with Melinex before turning. If it is too large for this, then you should roll the textile. This is an example of packed textile, two-dimensional packing. In this case, we don't need to touch the textile. We just pick up the box and open to see the textile. This is very good because it allows easy transportation, and also these lights, these boxes will provide light and dust from entering in the textile. This is an example of a three-dimensional artifact textile that is crushed with acid-free tissue and lightly filled the surrounding area with the box with rounding balls of tissue. This prevents the textile from fall down in the box when it is moved. So everything is very well cushioned. And now I will stop here.
Okay, and it's my turn to share.
Okay. Do you want, do you prefer to make a short break?
No, it's okay.
Okay, you have everything already.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
So let me just do here something, sorry. Okay. So I will start, and I will, stop my video so you can hear me well and there is no connection problems. So here we have the photographic materials. And as you can see here, we have a lot of different materials that we can have, and this will comprehend photographies in glass, in paper. So there is a huge variety within photography. So it's not a simple and straightforward material to handle, because it can be very, very different. So if you check here, there is a lot of different materials, And the first thing we need to do is to make some tests and visual observation. So it's the first level of visualization to try to identify the type of material we have. Is it a photography with a glass background? Is it an albumen print, as we can see here? Is it a chromogenic negative? So the first thing, it's very important to try to identify what we have as a material. And there are some tests we can perform to understand this, but the first level is for sure observation. So how do these materials decay and how are they affected? So as my colleague already mentioned, as for the general overview of preventive conservation, we now know that humidity is a very big issue. So we really need to pay attention to high relative humidity or to fluctuations, as Filomena mentioned. These are the worst case scenario. So for the photographic materials, high relative humidity will affect them. Variations in temperature, light is a very big issue also. Atmospheric pollutants, physical forces, and obviously this all put together in an incorrect storage and handling. So these will cause different damages to the different materials. And we have, for instance, the severe oxidation of the silver images. We can have discoloration, yellowing, fading, staining, embrittlement where the photographs start to break, or the discoloration of the paper. We can look into mechanical damages, and obviously we can enter into more difficult and complex degradation mechanisms as acid hydrolysis of the cellulose, which is the base. So the paper can also have problems if you have photography in a paper-based. So when we look to these materials, we can see immediately a lot of damages. As we can see what happens to when we have a negative in a glass plate. So you see that these are two very different materials. So you have glass as a base, as a background, and then as a substrate, and then you have the emulsion. And usually what we see, what happens is that it starts to come out. For the other materials, you can see a lot of stains, the yellowing. Here we have the problem of the silver. It starts to tarnish. I'm sure you have seen some of these problems in your very old pictures at home, that they start to show some of these problems. When we are facing, and this is very important, that's why it's important to understand and to differentiate the materials. If you have cellulose nitrate or cellulose acetate film-based negatives, it's very important to be aware if we have them in our collections, because they tend, for instance, the cellulose nitrate, as you see, it has a degradation mechanism that leads to this very big problem, which is the complete destruction and failure of the material. So here we lose everything. You lose the material and the information that is contained in it. The cellulose acetate, it also has a very similar problem, which is the completely destruction and disappearing of the image and about information. And here, if you, in the albumen prints, if you have a magnifying lens, you can see all the micro cracks and how the film is breaking with the degradation. So how should we handle these materials? As Filomena mentioned, we should only handle and move if it's really, really necessary. For instance, if you have a research or if you have an exhibition to prepare, obviously in these cases we have to move. Be very focused when doing it and follow all the rules and the guidelines. So prepare and clutter your working space. In this case, for photography, wear gloves. This is very important because the acids and the grease and oil in our hands, but especially the acids we have, are very, very, they can really cause harm to our material. So they wear gloves. If possible, this really makes a difference. Use a support. So don't transport in your hand. So you use a support. It can depend on the size of the photography. So if it's smaller, you can use a base as we see here, and one person alone can transport it. If it's very big, you can use the A supporter as Philomena already showed for painting. So it's the same kind of support. So you will handle the support rather than the photography. So use, if it has a frame, obviously use the frame to transport it instead of touching the photography itself, if it's safe and stable, of course. So organize your transport, label everything if it's a big collection, and if it's the labeling factor is also important, because the more you have labels and things identified, it can prevent the excessive handling to open and see what's inside, and so on. So related, but a little bit different, we move on to works on paper. And again, this is a world, because you can have from books with leather, to parchment, to maps, old maps. You can have paintings on paper. So it's again a very broad area, and sometimes we have nuances in these different materials. So basic rules to handle works on paper. Again, the first gold rule is move if needed. Here we use cotton gloves, while in photography usually we use nitrile gloves. So here for the paper, usually we use cotton gloves, or as we have seen in the video about handling, wash your hands very, very well before touching. Always use both hands to transport your object. And as a general rule, plan the route for moving a paper object and move slowly, okay? Be fully aware if you have your route completely clear. If it's a very big or heavy item, use trolleys to help you. And this is something very important. Sometimes we have this tendency to use the paper clips or dog ear folding to bookmark the pages. So if you have books or sets of papers in your collections, avoid using these. So remove all of these, because they will cause staining and marks and on the paper. The same with rubber bands, self-adhesive tape. Please do not use self-adhesive tape on paper, or any leather dressing, because leather can also stain. So one thing is if you have a book with a leather case, or if you are adding some kind of leather dressing, do not use it. or glue on books. So this may sound obvious, but it's not, and we find a lot of these situations in objects from museums and other kind of heritage institutions. So do not pay attention to this kind of details. So if you, again, the labeling is very important. And if you have a big set, a big collection of this type of materials, either photography or paper, you should write a set of handling procedures. This would be very helpful for the others that are working with you in this type of materials. And everyone should be following the same type of procedure to handle this type of materials. And obviously make sure it will be clear for everyone that is tailored to reduce direct handling. When you are removing books from shelves, for instance, it's important to grip on both sides and not at the middle of the book to grab it. Sometimes we see on exhibitions that books are displayed open to show some specific page or something. Make sure you are not forcing the book, and you are not forcing it to lie open to 180 degrees. Okay, it's not good. It should be open, but not as open as 180 degrees. So moving on from paper to a completely different world. So we are leaving the organic world and entering the inorganic world, and we are going to look for glass and ceramics. So very rapidly, what is glass and ceramics? These are two very different materials, first of all, but they are usually treated together, and as in the beginning, I was presented as a glass and ceramics conservator because usually the type of treatments these materials have are very similar. So these are inorganic. These are most affected by physical forces, okay, and water or incorrect relative humidity. So physical forces, I think it's obvious to everyone. If you drop glass or ceramics object, it will break. Everyone for sure has experienced this, but it can also suffer other problems besides breakage. It can have fissures, you can lose a part of the object, it can be scratched. So physical forces are our worst enemy concerning glass and ceramics. After, it's water, the presence of water or our incorrect relative humidity. Again, the problem is if we have cycles, okay? So if we have very high relative humidity and then very low and then very high again, and if this goes up and down, it will cause chemical degradation on the glass and also on ceramics because of the problem that we experience, for instance, in Portugal, in our tiles, which is the problems with salts. Salts go inside a ceramic body, which is porous, it has pores, and they will collapse and break the ceramic body on the inside. So be aware of physical forces and water or relative humidity. So how should we handle these objects? Again, only move it if it's absolutely necessary. When doing it, please be very, very focused. And this is a very important rule. Do not wear gloves. When we put gloves, we lose sensitivity in our hands. And since physical forces are our worst enemy here, do not wear gloves. It's an exception. As we've seen in the video that Filomena showed, if you are handling the ceramics with biodeterioration, or for instance, if you have cold painting, sometimes we need to wear gloves, but these are very, very specific cases. So for the majority of cases, of scenarios, do not wear gloves. Wash your hands very, very well. Another thing very important, remove everything that can strike an object. Rings, bracelets, watches, long necklaces, scarves that can be attached and can leave fibers. So remove everything before touching a glass or ceramic object. Always lift it by its gravity center, okay? Do not use structural areas as handles, as we seen on the picture. If you use a handle, you might end up with it in your hand separated from the object. Do not lift it from fractured spots, so always use the gravity center and try to look at the object and understand what should be its most stable area. Okay, never handle or move an object if you are in haste. Okay, if you are leaving and you are in haste, do not do it. Okay, ensure you have a clear path when moving the objects, and if needed, you should ask for help to open doors, open elevators, and so on. These are the basic rules for every material, but are more important when the objects suffer from physical forces. So we move on to metals. Again, we stay in the inorganic world. Metals can also be very different. You can have from gold, which does not suffer chemical degradation almost, and you can have other metals that do suffer and get stained. So it's, as I said, an inorganic material. Again, incorrect relative humidity and water are what most affects it, but also here pollutants are very important and they can cause severe degradation on metals. So water or incorrect relative humidity will cause chemical degradation. So we have degradation mechanisms that will happen, and it can lead to the complete disintegration of the metal. Okay, so your object can, in the end, disappear. Pollutants, and we have them everywhere. So certain airborne pollutants can initiate or make the degradation mechanisms more rapid. So it can happen. It will happen different things, but they can happen more rapidly. Okay. Also, obviously, physical forces are important. For smaller objects or for metal sculptures, the impact or falling, or they can cause the structure to collapse. It can cause deformation. So be aware also of the physical forces. Just because it's metal, it does not mean it's very strong. Okay. So when touching metal, wear gloves. Okay. As Filomena showed in the beginning, metal can be stained by our acids, the acids that we have in our hands. So it's our sweat, it can cause spots. If you have a silver object, it will become black, and it will initiate. It's not just it becomes black. You are initiating a degradation mechanism that will go on further on, and it will cause degradation. So preferably use nitrile or latex gloves. So do not wear cotton gloves, they will leave fibers. And as the same for glass and ceramics, remove all objects that can damage your object. So rings, bracelets, watches, long necklaces, scarves. And also never handle it in haste. If you see here in the image, besides the gloves, the conservator is using the acid-free paper where the object is wrapped on, she's using it to transport it. So she's not even touching the object with the gloves, because it's a silver object and it gets stained very, very easily. So, but we are not only talking about small objects. You have very, very big outdoor structures, as we can see here, the Statue of Liberty. We now see it green, as you are seeing in the picture. It's the copper degradation. Originally it should be, it was the color of copper. So it was a golden, rose golden color. So with the degradation, with the pollutants, with the environment, the rain, so she's outdoor. The sculpture gets all the rain, all the pollutants, so she became green. And sometimes it has to be like this. The metal degrades, the materials degrade, you cannot avoid it. But sometimes it's possible to put a covering or a structure to avoid the contact with direct rain. So when it's possible, do it. Concerning people, it should be good to ensure that no one can touch the metal object. So if you have a sculpture or a minor object on the outside, make sure you have a barrier to prevent people from touching it, okay? When we have outdoor structures, sculptures, and so on, the main priority will be monitoring. So create a protection and monitoring plan. How do we do this? We name and find someone who is responsible to go monitor, to go check the object, and when. Is this a place where everyone, thousands of people go through? So it should be probably monitored every week. If it's a place where no one can reach it and it's only seen a few times, you should create a protection or monitor plan to be seen like once in every month or so on. These people that go check the object should evaluate it and observe it to check for any degradation, any difference, something different that occurred from the last time it was seen, and whom should we contact if something is wrong, okay? So this is the creation of a monitor plan when we have outdoor structures in metal, and it will be the same for stone. So we move on to stone. Again, we keep and we stay in the inorganic world. Stone, in a first impression, can seem very stable, very strong. Nothing can affect it, but it's not true. First of all, we have a lot of different types of stones, okay? You can have from marble, which is a very stable and strong one, but you can have other types of stones that are not as stable and strong as marble. So how is stone affected? It can be affected by pollutants and water or relative humidity again. So pollutants they have sulfates and nitrates. Some of these pollutants are released from our cars, from our industry, and these will combine with components from the stone, and they will affect it. They will start degradation mechanisms. Acid rain, it's something that sometimes we experience, and because of pollution, of course, and it can practically dissolve all kinds of stones. So this is especially important if you have outdoor structures. Water and relative humidity. So again, the cycles, if you have very high relative humidity and very low after, they are responsible for the cycles of crystallization and dissolution of the salts that are inside the stone pores. So yes, stone have pores as ceramic, and salts can also cause damage. And this does not only happen in outdoor environments, it can also happen in indoor environments, so inside our museums. Okay. How should we handle? Always wear gloves. Again, stone can be easily stained by our sweat, by our hands. It can cause darken or lighter areas. And they will initiate degradation mechanism. This is something you can notice, and now that you know, we'll for sure see. If you have any stone sculpture near you that you pass regularly, you'll see that if you can touch it, those parts that can be reached by our hands, they will be stained because people are constantly touching it. So you'll see that those stains are caused by touching. So use nitrile or latex, not cotton, because cotton is very soft and you can easily drop the sculpture or the object. And this can also leave fibers. So, but usually what we have when handling stone objects, so they can be small, but they can be very big. So again, remove everything that can cause harm. Always lift an object by its center of gravity and do not use weak or structural areas, and larger sculptures can have a lot of these areas. And here, as you can see in the picture, they are using a crane system because these very big objects cannot be lifted by only the human force. So they are using loaders to move the stone. So make sure the loader is appropriate. There are companies that are used to work with heritage materials, so they can do this very well because they have proper cranes to do this. But pay attention, always protect the areas of the object that will be lifted. And obviously never do this if you are in haste. Always ensure that your path is clear and you have somewhere to put it down. Large outdoor structures, as you can see here, the Colosseum Coliseum of Rome, it's impossible to cover it, or I would say a very difficult task. So it's exposed to the outdoor environment. If it's a smaller scale outdoor sculpture, obviously we can, as we have mentioned for metals, you can put a cover and a structure to avoid direct rain. If not, we have to monitor. Again, make sure there is a barrier to prevent people from touching it, from reaching it. When we think about stone, we also think about buildings, historical buildings, and it should be, again, the priority should be monitoring, okay? Monitor the surrounding environment to identify potentially dangerous situations. For instance, if you are very close to an industry, we should be paying attention to pollutants and create a monitor plan, as we have mentioned for metals. Who is responsible to go monitor and when? What should be evaluated and observed when it's monitored, and who to contact when or if something is wrong. So to sum up, when you have to handle museum objects or heritage objects, please do remember to be aware of the specific needs of each object. Take all the time necessary for the operation. Do not do it in haste. Use trolleys or boxes if necessary, or cranes, as we have seen for stone. And never try to repair a damage by yourself. Call a conservator specialized in the material of your damaged object.